car sales falling for the last 10 months, an estimated 3 lakh jobs lost, and major manufacturers having to cut down on production, there is now no doubt that the auto sector is in major trouble. The troubled sector that has often been seen as an indicator of how the economy is performing is now desperately asking for help. First and foremost, they hope GST rates on vehicles are slashed from 28% to 18%, and then a scrappage policy is rolled out that would encourage people to buy new cars. But there is a different view out there as well. One that has emerged strongly over the last couple of weeks that says the auto sector in India perhaps is facing issues, some of them of its own making. That bailing out any sector would amount to moral hazard. That's in fact a view from the chief economic advisor. Interestingly, industry stalwart Uday Kotak weighed in on the debate today, in fact at an event organized by an auto manufacturing association, and there was a very strong message in what Uday Kotak said. Listen in.
If I divide the challenges to what I believe in the auto sector today, I really divide it into two parts, friends. One is what I call as structural, and the second is what I call as cyclical. What I think the auto sector really needs to focus on is be aware of some of the major structural changes which are happening in front of us. In my time, when I was starting my career, to buy a car was a status symbol. Okay, Gadi li. My son believes a lot more in Ola and Uber. We are also seeing, as I mentioned, the structural changes in the economy with customer preferences changing very significantly and efficiency in the system improving, which is going to be a competition.
All right, so a lot of strong points there coming in from Uday Kotak. In fact, he goes on to talk about how there should be some introspection among the auto sector. Now, this is a point that top economist Arvind Panagria also reiterated a few days ago when he was speaking with us, in fact, saying that there should be no bailout for the auto sector. So, is the pain and misery in the auto sector linked completely to the economic slowdown? Is some of it of its own making, and does it deserve a bailout? To speak on these issues, I'm joined now by Arun Malhotra, former MD of Nissan India. I'm also speaking with Gaurav Vangal, country lead automotive forecast at IHS Market, and ET Now's consulting editor Maithili Bustamante. Welcome to all of you, and thank you for speaking with us today. Mr. Malhotra, your response first, because you've been attending the event, the Siam event all day, where Mr. Kotak has made these comments, where a lot of people from the industry have also come together, and where the refrain we've heard is GST cut, GST cut, GST cut. What about the question that maybe there's an opportunity to introspect? Maybe all is not well within the industry, and first that needs to be fixed before demands of a bailout.
I heard the point of bailout. First of all, I don't agree with the concept of bailout. Today, if you look at the GST structure, it starts from 29% for small cars, and for cars of 10 lakhs plus goes up to 49%. Second of all, 2 years back when we had the GST rollout, road tax was not incorporated in the GST for a number of reasons. And GST, most states have actually increased the road tax, and it varies from about 7% to 13%. So let's take it as 10%. Effectively, for the two-wheelers and for small cars, the effective GST today is somewhere in the region of 40%, including registration tax. And now, the two-wheeler industry and the small car industry, and I'm not talking of the premium cars, is actually competing with cigarette and liquor, which are sin products. So if you're trying to bring them to rationalize it, I don't see any question of bailout. Now the question of structural changes, clearly there is a change, but I believe the structural change which we are talking of, which is basically the Uberization or the Ola phenomena, is still limited to few cities. And only people who have car in their families, for them it's not an aspiration, but for the vast multitude of people across the length and breadth of the country, we have about 7 districts, it is still aspirational. So obviously there is something going wrong, that the people who were actually first-time buyers or who are two-wheeler buyers are not buying it. So structural changes would be a reason for 5 to 10%. But the big problem is the slowdown, whether it's because of the wait and watch or the uncertainty prevailing, whether it's economic slowdown because the transition from the cash economy to the digital economy in terms of GST and demonetization has not taken place, or it's the increase in cost because a number of changes, whether in safety, Euro norms, are being clubbed together, and at least at the entry level, both for two-wheelers and cars, it is impacting the price point, which is making it more unviable. So that's what my view is.
Right, you know, some interesting points there, and I get the point about Ola, Uber, but I think there are broader points being made. There are sunset industries, there are sunrise industries. I want to welcome Nikun Sanghi, Director of FADA also, to the conversation. Mr. Sanghi, I think you missed the initial part, though I'm sure you heard what Uday Kotak said today, and I'm just taking off from that. Is there time and need for introspection within the auto industry right now? That maybe all your woes are not because there's an economic slowdown, maybe some of it is, but maybe the products are not as competitively priced as they should. Maybe they're not being exported as much because they're not of top quality. Maybe what is being sold to customers, they're not finding value for money. Maybe it's time for some introspection, Mr. Sanghi?
Well, I don't think it has anything to do with the quality or the products not being up to the mark, because we have been selling these products and these products have been very well received by the customers. In fact, I think they definitely have confidence in the product. But what has happened over last 1 year is that the cost of ownership, specifically in two-wheelers, has gone up by almost 30%. And I think a lot of people would have heard that during the SIAM conclave today. And there is obviously a price resistance which has developed because of this increase in price. Coupled with that is the economic slowdown. I mean, if there is an issue on non-discretionary purchases like the groceries and like eatables, like your regular provisions, I'm sure automobiles will rank after that as discretionary purchases. So I think it's more to do with the economic slowdown than price resistance or the quality issues with the vehicles. The products are very well received.
Okay, I want to get Maithili in because I remember Maithili making this argument long before this host of top economists have made it. I remember us speaking, Maithili, around 3.5 to 4 months ago. And of course, the GST rate cut demand was there, and you saying very clearly that there should not be a GST rate cut just for the auto sector, because then a host of industry will demand it, and maybe we don't have the fiscal space. Do you think that that argument stands even today, 3.5 to 4 months later, since you first made it, seeing how dire their straits are?
Well, yes, but the question of how dire is a very subjective statement, Tamanna, because it is a fact. In fact, I agree with Mr. Malhotra that it's a combination of factors, and most important of all is the economic slowdown. Remember, we've seen GDP numbers coming in at the lowest in the past 25 quarters. We saw manufacturing growth at 0.6%. So obviously, we are going to see the impact on, particularly on auto purchases, because auto, as Mr. Sanghi said, is a discretionary purchase. You would do it only after you met all your other more essential needs. So added to that, you have the factor of NBFCs not being willing to lend so much, NBFCs themselves being strapped for funds. And it is true that if you were to give a GST cut across the board for all automobiles, then it would really impact not only the government's own revenues, but there would be similar demands from a host of other sectors. So there might be a case for rationalization, certainly for bringing down GST on, say, two-wheelers, which is certainly not a luxury item in our kind of economy. But overall, across the board cut would be unwise. Rationalization, perhaps there is a case to relook at the entire issue, but GST is not in the central government's hands anymore.
Absolutely. The GST Council has to push through. But I think a reason why these appeals are being made to the Finance Minister is because now the GST Council is composed in large part by state finance ministers from BJP-run states. So there is a hope that, you know, if there is a political will, it will push through. My second question, follow-up, is to you again, Maithili, about the moral hazard aspect of it. And the bigger question about the auto sector, whether their woes are economic slowdown led, or, you know, this other narrative that is building up, that maybe they need to look at how the business has been run all of this time. And those cracks perhaps are beginning to show.
Oh yes. yes, certainly there is scope for introspection, because certainly the automobile sector, along with many other sectors in India, is not necessarily the most efficient, which is why, in fact, we've seen this case argument being made by Rajiv Bajaj and also Mr. BVR Subbu, formerly of Hyundai, former ex-president of Hyundai India, who said that India is not being able to tap the export market. Of course, exports across the world are not in a good shape. There is an impact of the trade wars between US and China, but certainly the automobile industry in India, along with a host of other industries, is not really truly globally competitive. The auto parts, the ancillary industry perhaps is more competitive than the automobile industry per se. So that there is certainly a scope for introspection from the automobile industry. So I think it has to be a combination of both, some kind of succor from the government, but always with an eye on what it means in terms of revenue losses, and some pulling up of their own bootstrings by the automobile industry themselves. Because it is, of course, an important sector, but we cannot have demands being made by one sector after the other. Because you have auto today, real estate tomorrow, power, telecom, where will it end?
Yeah. No, everyone has made the demand. Real estate is also making the demand. You're very right. Gaurav, you want to come in on that? And you know, the sort of the debate that is raging. Let me just put it very simply. Does the auto sector really deserve any special treatment right now? Even with you know, the claim that 8 million jobs are attached to this, but does it deserve special treatment?
See, let me begin with the statement that when we started the year, we were expecting a 5% growth from India, and that was the second fastest growing market after Brazil that time. Today, we are expecting a 11.5% decline. That will be the fastest in the globe. What we are expecting, that we are going very steeper towards down. That is what has given by the uncertainty, what has been prevailed throughout the last 8 months. Now, if a government wanted to give a GST or not, now GST uncertainty is another factor which is coming in. We are talking about from the last 3 months. If we are looking for a GST cut, I think we should have it, or we should be denied by it. Okay, so this is hurting more now, because consumer is waiting for a GST cut. Consumer is a smart consumer today. They understand, they're getting aware that government is also talking, industry is also talking about GST cut. So this is again delaying the purchasing decisions. So whether we are looking for a GST cut or not, please be very please take the decision and get over it, move forward for it. So that is what my opinion is right now from the another uncertainty coming from the GST.
Okay, that's a very interesting point, that the whole GST cut you know, sort of suspense is skewing the position even more. Are there any inputs on that? If anyone wants to come in, Maithili, do you want to weigh in on that? Because you know, consumers are thinking, if I'm going to get the same product at a lower price because of GST cuts, why should I buy now? Let me wait and watch.
Well, because Tamanna, the central government really cannot announce anything on behalf of the GST Council, because this is a decision that has to be taken by the Council. And you're right, many of the states are now BJP ruled, but the government cannot preempt a decision which has been given to the Council, and the Council meets only on the 20th of September. So I think the automobile industry has to wait. Moreover, the Finance Minister has also already announced a number of measures, a slew of measures. We also saw RBI compel banks literally to lower their interest rates. So I think the automotive industry must also be a little patient and cannot expect that everything can be done for them. They have got a number of concessions. Yes, government did skew the pitch a little bit by making the the proposals about the EV vehicles, also in talking on registration charges. They were a little late in reacting, but now that the government has reacted, let us wait and see how this works out. And then, if necessary, when the GST Council meets, only then can a decision be taken. The government cannot unilaterally take a decision, and I think the industry must understand that.
And then, is it all about just that discount? Is it all about just that 10% rate cut, and we'll have to see how much of it will actually be passed on in, to the final end consumer? Arun Malhotra, does the success and survival of the auto sector, hinge on that 10% GST cut?
No, it's not hinges totally on the GST cut. GST cut is an important point, but there were good government measures announced, but these measures are, whether it's on depreciation or whether it's on some other advantages, government purchasing vehicles, they will take time. But I clearly remember, and I remember the quarter October to December 2008, and that was the quarter when we had the global meltdown because of subprime crisis, and we also had that unfortunate incident in 26/11 in Mumbai when sentiment was low. I still remember 26/11 was the incident, and 4th December 2008, a 4% GST cut was announced, or a 4% sales tax cut. That time it was a excise cut, and it really set. The idea is it should set into motion. I think certain announcements have been made which are in good spirit, because there was a lot of confusion. People felt that if they buy a BS4 vehicle, it can be banned any time, or the restriction cost would be triple. So this uncertainty and chaos has been removed. But the second point, with the finance minister announcing, I was talking to customers, that 20th we have put over our recommendation, let the GST council decide. And the customer would believe if finance minister is recommending, logically, and that's their comprehension, they should wait. So sales have come to a stop. So I think what point was mentioned by one of the fellow, that we should rather have a quick decision one way or the other. I believe there's a strong case for it, but some quick decision one way or the other has to come out, and the other measures which are done, we have to do, we have to take action on it. But clearly, I think one of the biggest challenge which is facing is the economy disruption in a small town. Because since even 2 years back or 3 years back when we were having good growth, the growth was not led by Mumbai, Delhi and Bangalore. It was led by the small towns, whether it's a Sangrur or the Shillongs, they led the growths. Those towns, because of the change of the economy or the slowdown where the farming distress is causing problem. So I think a lot of measures, there will be some measures on the economic front, some on the auto front, and some measures announced. So it requires a package deal. So it's not an isolation, GST cut is the only point.
No, GST cut is not the only point, but what is the package deal and what can the government do? Because right now the auto sector has been the loudest and most vocal in lobbying the government for concessions. Some of it has come with to whatever extent they could. For example, the finance minister said we will start buying new vehicles now for government departments, which we had frozen earlier, and things like that. Mr. Sanghi, just explain to us that even if there is this GST cut, which is being hoped for, which will come at its own time and with its own process, what will be the actual impact for the end consumer, and do you have any kind of estimate on to what extent it will spur sales, if at all?
So what you need to understand is that these are triggers, and what I think the entire industry is looking forward to is the oncoming festival season. So if the GST cut is announced at the right time, and with the other packages which the Honorable Finance Minister has already announced in terms of lowering the interest rates on refunding of banks and therefore easier finance available for NBFCs, so sufficient liquidity. So I think all this put together will actually trigger a demand, and the GST cut, when there is a transition from BS4 to BS6, is what we are looking forward to, because all other things that the government could do has done, and they have been exhausted, but it has not had an impact. And like Mr. Malhotra said, that some of these measures will take time, and depreciation cut is not meant for the normal consumer. Depreciation cut will only benefit businesses. It will not benefit you, me, who are driving two-wheelers and smaller cars. We are using it for our own use, where we don't get a depreciation benefit. So this is the trigger that the industry is hoping for and looking for. And we are not asking for a permanent reduction in GST cut. We are talking of a temporary relief. We are talking of a transitory relief that the industry gets, so that there is a kickoff in the economy. And I think the auto industry, if you look at both ends, which is the component manufacturers and the dealers at the other end, I think it impacts, there is a cyclical impact. It's an impact on the entire economy. It's not just the auto industry.
No, that's true. But then, the counter to that is, and I'm going to take this to Gaurav, that look at what's happening in China. Look at what's happening in China, where the auto sector is seeing its biggest slump and drop in sales, I think in over a decade, if I'm not mistaken. 13 times sales have dropped in the last 14 months. That is having a ripple effect on German auto sector, because they're the biggest exporters to China. So we are seeing a change, structural change in the sector the world over. It's not just Ola, Uber, but people moving to electric vehicles, people not wanting to buy as many vehicles as before or so excited about it, the share economy, ride share economy. So all of those are realities, isn't it, Gaurav?
Yes, that's the reality. But please understand, this reality is stick only to the metropolitan cities like Mumbai and Delhi. We have a vast country, and our penetration to the cars is approximately 30 car per thousand. We have a lot of opportunities available in Indian market where we can grow. As mentioned by Mr. Malhotra, there the cities like small cities are growing much faster than the bigger cities. These Ola, Ubers are changing, giving us a behavioral change at the metropolitan cities as of now. We understand it is going to move towards the rural, but currently these all are hurting us at the metropolitan cities.
Okay, Maithili, you want to come in, on this point of what we're seeing the world over, and is the Indian context in line with what we're seeing the world over, or is that then, as Gaurav says, just what we see in top metros in and around us, where people would rather not buy a car, etc.?
I would agree with Gaurav, mainly because the Indian market is not a saturated market. Unlike Western markets and more prosperous advanced countries, where perhaps people have already bought all the cars that they want to buy and they're only thinking in terms of moving up, upgrading, there is a very large section of the Indian population which still dreams of a car. It is an aspirational product. So I do not think we're saturated, so there will be that demand. But when the government thinks in terms of SOPs or bailouts or GST cuts, they have to weigh the cost as well as the benefit. Because you remember, Taman, not too long ago, where FPI is demanding that cut the surcharge, and when the government finally rolled back the surcharge, FPIs continue to withdraw money from the Indian stock market. So it is not as if this can be the only factor, and that will completely turn the tide. So I think it has to be a bit of a cost-benefit trade-off. Government will have to think in what does it mean for other sectors? Will they be compelled to give these similar concessions to other sectors as well? So I think there are no easy answers, but certainly in the case of, say, two-wheelers, I would agree that 28% does seem too high, and they could perhaps reduce it. But on the whole, we'll have to wait and watch. There is no magic silver bullet. Once the economy recovers, we will see an improvement. Till then, I think we'll all have to bear the pain and see how best we can mitigate it, but we can't escape it completely.
Okay, I just want to get a quick last response from Mr. Sanghi to, Maithili's suggestion that if you want to reduce GST rates, do it on two-wheelers, not necessarily across the board.
So I would say, yes, two-wheelers definitely is a very, very strong case, but she also talked about luxury segment. So maybe if at all there is no room for the luxury segment, we could avoid it. But what about entry-level cars? I mean, I am talking about cars which are valued at less than 6 lakhs, and they are the ones which are being bought by lower middle class and middle class people who are in government service. I think those are the segments. So there is a similar GST rate on all cars, from two-wheelers to luxury segment cars. There is a 28% GST. I think what is called for is smaller cars and two-wheelers definitely. I would recommend a GST cut across the board on all cars for a temporary period, and the government specifying the temporary period so that it triggers a demand. And there is a festival season coming on. There are inventories which have been built up. Yeah. We are transitioning to BS6. So I think we have a strong case, and we are talking of jobs. We are talking of the entire economy.
Well, there is some certainty now, at the very least, that ICE or the internal combustion engine is not going to be sort of outlawed. Yes, Mr. Malhotra.
One thing I'd like to add, Nikunj, one thing which you must see in the figures is if the decline in the four-wheeler industry is to the tune of 15-16% over the last 5 months. Yeah. The decline in entry-level cars, which are below 3.5 lakhs, is to the tune of 30 to 35%. The contribution of small cars is coming down dramatically. That means people who had the aspiration to move from two-wheelers to four-wheelers are impacted the most. So that's why there is a case clearly for four-wheelers, but definitely for entry-level cars, where it is becoming out of reach for the aspiring middle class.
Well, that's a very important point. But, just back to the bigger picture. Okay, Gaurav, I'm out of time, but I'll allow you one quick last word. Quick last word, Gaurav.
So just a caution I wanted to bring it here, that if the situation is deteriorating day by day, till now we are hearing only days of plant shutdowns. If it is continues, the uncertainty continues, I think it is going to convert into the week shutdown, plant shutdown days going forward. So we have to act now. That is what I wanted to reinforce.
No, I'm not saying we don't have to act, and I know this is a very strong pitch from the auto sector. It's difficult to give a counterpoint, which we've attempted to today. But I just to balance all of that, I just want to say, think about it.
Sure.
Is this a sector which is going to continue the way it currently is over the next 50 years? Are we going to travel the same way? Are we going to use the same fuel? Is this sector moving towards a sunset or not? I think those are big questions we have to think of even today. Even as we look at rescuing it from the current ditch it seems to have fallen into. I want to thank all of you for joining us on the debate this evening. Thank you so much for watching India Development Debate, to all of the viewers. And before we go, I want to wish all of you and all of our teachers out there a very happy Teachers' Day. Indeed, one of the noblest professions, and what a teacher contributes to a child's growing up, and knowledge cannot be valued by money. So before we go, we're leaving you with a very special segment where we tell you who the gurus of our market gurus are. Enjoy, and thank you for watching.